Hello again, thank you for joining me for another video. So today I am continuing from the last video where I have been investigating non-duality and its impact on religion, hierarchy, how we understand good and evil. So I was raised Christian, but I wasn't Christian like super strict in any regard. We didn't go to church every Sunday. I was not required to wear any certain special dress or anything like that. But I think in general, American culture is very much a Christian culture. And so it's infused in it. And then also I went to parochial private school from kindergarten to 8th grade. So that was a part of my training in terms of my education. But my actual home life, was not, that wasn't like, my mom wasn't hyper strict about any of those things. What she passed on was like a moral integrity to maintain my sense of pride in myself, so that I wasn't being a kind of yucky person, but to maintain some dignity in myself and how I presented myself in the world and that sort of thing. Not, don't steal, don't hurt people, stand up for the downtrodden, and those kinds of ideas. That was all part of my moral upbringing. And I think a lot of us, in whatever culture we come from, have some form of moral guidance. Sometimes this comes from the culture itself, tradition. Sometimes it'll be more formalized in like a religious manner. A lot of ours in America here comes from the education system. That is also our moral compass, that most people is like good enough. As long as you get that much, it's good enough. And so when you try to ponder some of the bigger questions of a spiritual nature, about the nature of reality itself and what is everything, and trying to find words that can cross cultures and can cross ideas and perspectives in that way, so that there's harmony maintained in the human community, the larger essence of the civilizations here on planet Earth right now, it can get a little tricky. So one of the things that I noticed with when I watch like non-dual teachers and then go into the comment section and try to get some idea of what do these people mean, what is that essential meaning that they're taking, because really Christianity blends well into a non-dual idea. And I think there are a lot of Christian mystics that would agree that there is a non-duality that you come to after a certain amount of investigation and surrender into the faith of that there is only God. And the more that you remove the kind of like the fruits of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, so the fruit of this limited life here on earth, the less you are attached to and eating from this tree, as it were, the more open to the larger eternal soul that you are one with. And so it makes sense. There's a logical progression through it, that you can start out being just you just have faith, and then you get grown into it, you mature into it. And that is different than other ways that non-duality is expressed. So some of the ways that I've seen it expressed is really they get very sure about the illusion. Really, I can't say that word right now. The illusion that everything is not real, even the words that we can and cannot say. And I'm not retaping this. You're gonna take it as it is. Sorry, I don't feel like it. This hard stuff to talk about. They're really deep concepts, realistically. And I think sitting in a study group with them that met on a regular basis and really kind of going over, like I've been in this lesson for a couple of weeks right, pretty deep and heavy into it, and it would be great if I had like a study group that was simultaneously going through the same kind of lessons, and so we could compare notes and bring it in a little deeper than I can do by myself, but just taking pieces of what other people are putting out. Because for the most part, like, you really need to be in sync with what other people are putting out, and I don't tend to be. I tend to be on my own little journey. I don't know how many people are deep diving into the Amish culture right now, and Buddhism simultaneously. Where do they agree? Where do they disagree? Why do they agree? And why do they disagree? And kind of trying to get to the root and the heart of that. Anyway, so I was trying to talk about the illusory nature of things, and how, a lot of times what I've seen in these comment sections is, there's two different things that I'll say, and one of them is, there's no self. You're not real. So you can let go of any pain that you have, any suffering you have, because the only reason that you're suffering is because you think you're real. And it is really a delusional stance to take, and I don't really believe that the amount of focused awareness and peace that you would have to have been able to cultivate within yourself to have no sensory experience that disturbed you, that is not, you don't grasp that just by grasping the concept of that thread of truth that exists there, because it's essentially saying, well, there's no, you're making a judgment about pain, and that's why you feel pain, and realistically the body is wired to avoid things that could harm it. Life wants to have more life. Life is a creative force that seeks to maintain itself, and so those signals of where it is coming up against that which is not life feel like pain, and you don't have to judge that, but that doesn't mean it isn't perceived, or that we need to discount the perception that happens within that. And I think it can just be really confusing to people, and on many levels, because of the vast amount of harm that is occurring in our kind of like trauma-filled situation. It's really it isolates people who are needing to process their trauma and pain, and one of the ways that we do that is through the comfort of getting comfort and validation from others, and that really helps loosen up the trauma and pain. So when you tell them instead, well, actually there's no you, and if you would just stop identifying with yourself, then you wouldn't be in the trauma state you're in. And as soon as you stop identifying with the trauma, you will identify with God. And while there is some substance to that, the compassion that is actually necessary to go from one level of perspective and awareness to the other is not, it can't be just dismissed. It's one of the things that connects us. And I think a person who is not feeling into another person's sorrow is disconnected from reality. And teaching something from a privileged standpoint, of not being in a current state of horrendous pain, that you can say, I am not currently in a state of pain because I have achieved enlightenment, but it could just as easily be because you're not in pain, you are assuming that is enlightenment. I don't know if you catch the difference there, but it actually matters, because it puts a great burden on people who have been victimized to kind of shut up about it and get over it. And we judge pretty harshly some of the people who have had it the the hardest. And I think because then we separate from them, and that is part of the problem that we're facing, where it just kind of compounds and propels itself into becoming this bigger issue. That's the way pain works. It's a little signal at first, and it becomes louder and louder and louder. Ignoring it doesn't tend to make it go away. So the other thing that I've heard often is, and this is part of the same line of problems, when you are talking about a pretty, it's like trying to imagine heaven, in that if you're capable of imagining it, you get to have it. And so as much as possible, these images of heaven have been distorted, confused. Rules how to get there don't always lead there. And the methods for experiencing it are convoluted. And yeah, so like one of the things that I've seen is God and consciousness being the all-pervasive I am, or awareness, or beingness, that subject and even pre-subject state of kind of emptiness, right? That is equated with God, and then God is equated with, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good. And so what ends up happening is that everything is, because everything is existing within consciousness, and consciousness has been equated with God, now everything is good. There is no bad. Whether it's good or bad doesn't matter, because it's all God. And it takes away that localized experience of discernment, of choice, of the creative drive, the cultivation of will in a particular direction. And there has to be a purpose for will. And I think a lot of times people get confused about the difference between ego and will. I think will exists with the subjective state, or nothing would be at all. It is an act of will that anything exists. And it's imperative that we don't lose that, because it's something we're experiencing here. And so if we aren't, and I know that there's so much like, this is good and that's bad, and I'm picking this side and you're picking that side, and I can't be friends with you, and I understand that the chaotic landscape that arises out of needing to discern the difference between good and evil, or good and bad, or light and dark, or however you want to understand it. But just because it is oppressive to have to look at doesn't mean that anyone who is capable shouldn't. And that a true, once you get to your true spiritual awakening, is when you no longer concern yourself with the human condition of good and bad. And the thing is that generally people who are coming to that conclusion are still very much engaged with modern society. They have not removed themselves and gone off into a cave somewhere where they really aren't affected or affecting that relationship of good and bad that's working itself out in the lives of real live people. And I think it's important to not go there. Don't bring that. Don't act like good and evil are the exact same thing because they are occurring in the same space. That's like, I can have the air conditioner on in one room, and if I close that room off from everything else, and everything else gets really hot, it's all the same apartment, but there are different temperatures, and your experience within that is going to be different. That doesn't mean that it's not still one apartment, but I'm not not delusional, or I'm not missing something really important about the nature of reality, because I notice those differences. And I think there's more to investigate about our relationship to pain and pleasure and will, and how that relates. And I think I'm just going to keep digging down here a little bit deeper to come to some greater understanding of this as I go, and I will share with you my findings as I come to them. I hope you're well. Please feel free to leave any comments below. Until next time, take care.